starting our presentation, I would like to remind you that each presentation time will be 10 minutes, and there will be a question and answer part for 5 minutes. And the first presentation is mine. Let me start my presentation first. I also would like to remind you that each presentation is recorded. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Hocam.
Yes, you can see my screen. Okay, my presentation title is Comparative Analysis of Epistemic Model Works in the Three Subcorpora of Humanities and Social Sciences. Since academic writing has its own peculiar linguistic characteristics, researchers in academic discourse have focused on the language of specialized genres of writing in the past decades, as we all know. For instance, the undergraduate academic essays and postgraduate theses and dissertations have been explored. But perhaps even more attention has been given to professional and expert writing genres, especially the research articles, which is central for communicating new knowledge. According to Hewings, the research article is the most important channel for conveying claims of new knowledge. Studies on research articles conducted by Swales have been influential in encouraging further studies on the linguistic and textual rhetorical features of the research article. And much of the previous research conducted on the research articles has focused on how non-native academics writing in English use these features in their research articles. And they attempted to determine the extent to which these rhetorical patterns and choices in the research article texts conform to expected discourse community textual practices. As Kovanak emphasizes, linguistic, rhetorical, and genre norms are not only expected, but they are also actively enforced in academic writing. If we move on to the importance of epistemic modality in academic writing, according to Wald, epistemic modality concerns the reliability of the information conveyed, and epistemic modality markers are defined as linguistic expressions that explicitly qualify the truth value of a propositional content. With epistemic modality, the evidence available to a writer determines the level of confidence that supports an assertion, a statement, or a proposition. Epistemic modality is communicated through a variety of linguistic resources, such as modal verbs, which is specifically the concern of this preliminary study, such as may, would, could, and must. But epistemic modality also is conveyed by other linguistic devices, such as adjectives like possible, likely, adverbs such as possibly, perhaps, and lexical verbs are also important in here, seem and appear like, nouns like hope and chance, and other categories such as other phrases and clauses. In this study, I focus on epistemic modal verbs. And the use of epistemic modality in the category of modal verbs has been comparatively examined in the journal articles in the discipline of humanities and social sciences. For this purpose, the corpus of journal articles, which is a collection of 760 articles from high impact journals in 38 disciplines, has been used. And the humanities, social sciences within this corpus consists of 23 subdisciplines. But the articles written in the discipline of humanities and social sciences have been further divided into 3 subcorpora: research articles, review articles, and theoretical articles. So the corpus consists of around 6 million words in total. My research questions are: what is the relative frequency of epistemic modal verbs in the discipline of humanities, social sciences with respect to the overall incidence of epistemic modal verbs in each of the 3 subcorpora, which are the research articles, review articles, and theoretical articles? And what does a corpus-based analysis tell us about the professional academic writer's versatility and overall rhetorical awareness with regards to the use of epistemic modal verbs for academic argumentation? And is there a meaningful difference among the 3 different types of articles in terms of epistemic modal verb use? So here, humanities and social sciences, in this study, all of these disciplines have been included, but of course, in further studies, the disciplines should be limited to 2 or 3 maybe, in order to make more correct comparisons. In the method of this study, the 3 subcorpora, as I said, of research articles, I started by consulting previous studies to determine a list of modal verbs with potential epistemic value, and a total of 10 forms were derived, as in the following. The forms can and were not included for analysis because they rarely occur in epistemic forms, and they have not been previously listed as epistemic forms in previous studies. As part of qualitative analysis, I examined the concordance lines for determining the model's epistemic uses over non-epistemic ones. The close reading of concordance lines is crucial, as we all know, because non-epistemic uses should be deleted. If I come to the epistemic meanings of may, will, and would, these modal verbs were most commonly used in the 3 subcorpora. May was used to express epistemic possibility, weakened prediction sense, speculation, and interpretation of echoes. Would and will, the difference between would and will in my analysis also, writers want to be more tactful and polite towards their claims, since the epistemic meaning of would compared to will is less assured and forthright, and they are often used to reduce the writer's level of confidence in the truth of the proposition. Because of the time limit, I would like to just show you the epistemic examples of may, would, and will in the research articles. These examples are from the research articles subcorpus, and they are used in their epistemic sense. These modal verbs were mostly used in the research article subcorpus, and these are the ones that are most commonly used in theoretical articles. Would again is common, may and will. And then the review articles, may, would, and will again are mostly used ones, are mostly used modal verbs, let's say. In the analysis, of course, this is standardized per 10,000 words in order to make a correct comparison. Here in the research articles subcorpus, may, would, and will are mostly used epistemic verbs, and the negative forms of these verbs are least used. And in here we can see in theoretical articles subcorpus, would, may, and will are respectively the most commonly used modal verbs in their epistemic sense. And in review articles, may, would, and will are mostly used, and as we see, the negative forms are least used. In here, log likelihood results have been conducted to see whether there are significant differences in the subcorpora between research and theoretical articles. There is a difference between will and would, but this is not significant, statistically significant, though it is. There is a difference in here between them, we can see. In the research articles and review articles, no significant differences are found, and also in comparing theoretical and review articles, no significant differences are found again. In this study, epistemic model verbs as rhetorical resources to make research claims in academic writing has been explored, but different types of articles may have their own conventional rhetorical strategies. Therefore, this issue should be further investigated. Our postgraduate students may not be fully familiar with the rhetorical patterns of English and strategies that is used in conventional writing. Results of this study will therefore have important implications for the teaching and learning of academic writing. Thank you for your attention. Because of the time limit, I need to stop in here, I think, because 10 minutes is over. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions or comments, I can take them. I cannot make it a full screen. Sorry.
On the right bottom corner, there should be an icon to enlarge it.
Should I press end in here?
No.
Stop share.
I guess, yeah, you can stop sharing.
Stop share. I am clicking on the stop share button.
Yes, you can.
Okay. Huh. That's it.
Yep.
Pardon. So I think I need to tell the next presenter. Sorry for the inconvenience, by the way. Our next presenter is Mustafa Tekin. I think you are the co-host, Hocam. His presentation is titled An Experimental Study on EFL Teacher Trainees' Opinions about English as a Lingua Franca. Okay, Hocam, you may start.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, and you can also see my screen, right?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. So, first of all, welcome to my presentation. And I'm going to talk about actually EFL teachers. Just a second. Sure, okay. EFL teacher trainees' opinions about English as a lingua franca. And let me make it big screen as well. Right. Okay. So my study is a quantitative quasi-experimental research design with repeated measures. And the initial opinions of the participants were investigated, as well as how their opinions changed after a semester-long target culture, native speaker-oriented class practices versus intercultural, EFL-oriented practices. So a total of 83 students participated in the study. And to collect the data, a 6-item mini questionnaire was used as a pre and post survey immediately before and after the experiment. And overall, the results indicated that the teacher trainees under investigation favored native English varieties over non-native ones, while at the same time accepting the international lingua franca role of English in today's globalized world. Let's talk about the details now. Well, I don't want to go into detail about, the history of world Englishes and, of ELF, etc. So briefly, the circles of Kashru anyway, the inner, outer, and expanding circle countries. And later on, Jenkins and Seidelhofer and, McKay and all those people, in the 2000s. After 2000, elaborated on English as a lingua franca and, developed certain new models, etc. But since we don't have much time, I'm just skipping all the theoretical knowledge. I mean, at least, the most of the theoretical knowledge, not all of it. And there has been an increasing level of interest on the pedagogical implications of ELF research. And there is also a growing body of research which investigates the integration of a more ELF-informed and ELF-aware perspective in ELT practices, and emphasizing standardized native varieties as the only acceptable form of English has a negative impact on the self-confidence, self-esteem of language learners. And also, some scholars are calling for a change in current ELT practices in the direction of their being more inclusive of non-native English varieties as well, including Ulead, actually, Ulead also suggests that we use more non-native varieties of English from an intercultural point of view. And the ELF-informed pedagogy has to be achieved mainly through exposure to English varieties also, so exposure plays a key role here. And Bayard and Sfakis say that the transformative ELF-aware teacher education is a promising implication of ELF perspective for ELT. And so more research is needed. That's why actually, I conducted this research. And since I'm running out of time again, I'm just skipping all these theoretical things. Well, let's talk about the study. Again, it's a quantitative, quasi-experimental research design with repeated measures. It's a pre-post design, basically. And so 83 freshman year students participated in 3 classes, 3 intact groups, actually. And the data in this study were collected through a mini questionnaire. I have already mentioned that. And the results were analyzed through a number of parametric tests. I mean, both, descriptively and also some parametric tests were used. The 3 groups of participants, which were the intact sections of the freshman ELT students, were assigned the roles of 2 experimental groups and 1 control group. And prep class attendance status of the participants was taken into consideration while making the arrangement of groups. Actually, while assigning the groups. And the experimental groups, which were the culturalist group and interculturalist group, were similar in terms of the number of students who had attended the prep class. The overwhelming majority of the experimental group students had not attended the prep class. Therefore, the assignment was made randomly between the experimental groups, actually. So what happened? Let me talk about the procedures a little bit. The two experimental groups took the semester-long native speaker target culture-oriented treatment in the culturalist group versus alpha-informed intercultural-oriented treatment in the interculturalist group. And we also had the control group, and they did not take any culture-related instruction or anything related to culture at all. Or no, they did not take any listening exercises, but the students in this group were only exposed to English phonetics with inner circle norms. So it was basic phonetics, the phonetic alphabet, transcriptions, etc. So ALPHOS was administered twice as pre and post survey, and each of the three groups met once a week for the 135 minutes course session under the supervision of the researcher. And in the intercultural group, the instruction and materials were of intercultural nature. On the other hand, the activities in the cultural or culturalist group followed the traditional facts transmission-oriented culture teaching procedures, which only, focused on the cultures of inner circle countries. So all in all, the activities were similar in both experimental groups on the surface level, but differed greatly in terms of the content, aim, and scope. And so the participants in the interculturalist group were exposed to a number of both native and non-native varieties through their specially prepared textbooks. Okay, so listening exercises were altogether avoided in the control group. So this is just a brief overview of the procedures. So if you need to check, you can just check it real quick. And so these are the questions, okay, in the mini questionnaire. So let's look at the results. Item 1, this is the pre-survey. So these are the results of the pre-survey when it was conducted before the experiment. So English is an international common language. The great majority of the students actually agree with this statement. And English only belongs to the nations who use it as their mother tongue. Well, again, most of the students, like more than 70%, disagree with this statement that English has a more lingua franca nature, they believe actually, okay? So they do not, English does not only belong to inner circle countries. So as long as one gets the meaning across, how one speaks English does not matter. Now we see a more balanced, distribution of opinions, like almost half of the students disagree with this statement, whereas the other half, agree with this statement. So I would like to learn about non-native English accents too, as a part of the listening and pronunciation course. Well, yeah, most of the students agree with this actually, that, they should also, or they also want to be exposed to non-native varieties of English in addition to native varieties of English actually. So I would like lecturers in my department to use the native accents of English while lecturing. But again, most of the students, like 60% or something, think that, they would like it if their lecturers used native accents rather than non-native ones. So item 6, I would like to speak with the native accent of English. Well, for their, goals, their goal is to make their accent as native-like as possible. They would like it, love it actually, if they could speak English with a native accent. So this is the second, these are the results when, the questionnaire was given a second time after the experiment at the end of the semester, by the way. And this time some parametric tests were used, like MANOVA, etc. And, there are some interaction effects in items 4 and 6 and also 3. Let's look at the interaction
excuse me, we have 1 minute left. Excuse me.
Okay, I will finish.
1 minute left.
I will finish in 1 minute.
I'll just remind you.
Okay, thank you very much. When we look at this, for example, there is a sharp decrease in the control group, which has certain indications. Actually, they do not want to learn about non-native English accents after the experiment, the control group. And when we look at this, there is the sharpest decrease was observed in the interculturalist group, which means actually they do not, a smaller or less number of students wanted to speak with a native accent of English after the experiment. And as long as one gets the meaning across, how one speaks English does not matter. Again, we see some changes, especially in the interculturalist group, and they valued the importance of communication this time. So these are the findings. I have explained the findings anyway, so I'm just skipping it. Although they are valuing the native accents, still some changes occurred after the experiment. And the conclusion is, when the findings of earlier studies are taken together with this study, it's clearly seen that for Turkish EFL teacher candidates, the inner circle standard accents are still important, both as models for their own learning and for instructional purposes. However, they also believe that exposure to non-native varieties is also important, but for creating familiarity with the different English accents, they do not want to take them as models though, okay? So they do not want to speak like, non-native speakers. So the implications are shortly, well, there are some implications for, exposing our students to non-native varieties, for awareness raising, etc. And so they will be more appreciative of and tolerant about, non-native English varieties. And it's also good from intercultural point of view to value the importance of diversity, etc. So that's all I want to talk about. Thank you very much for listening. And if you have any questions, you can just go ahead.
Thank you for your presentation, Mustafa Hocam. If we have any questions or comments, we can take them. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So let's go on with our next presentation, which is by Meral Yavuz Kartal, titled "In Evaluation of the Effectiveness of the Foreign Language-Oriented Fifth Grade English Curriculum in Practice According to Teachers' Views." Okay, Hocam. You may start the presentation.
Yes, I'm here. Hello, dear participants. Before my presentation, let me very shortly introduce myself. My name is Meral Yavuz Kartal, and I'm an English teacher and also PhD student in ELT. Currently, I'm working as a project coordinator in Çanakkale Governorship. Now, my paper is about, my study is about an evaluation of the effectiveness of the foreign language-oriented fifth grade English curriculum in practice, according to the teacher's view. The purpose of the study was a study to explore Turkish EFL teachers' views about the new fifth grade intensive English teaching program implemented in pilot schools during the 2017 and 2018 educational year. The study tried to find out the teachers' views towards the new curriculum in terms of its objectives, teachers' practices. By the way, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. Besides this, study investigated the teachers' general beliefs about the curriculum, the difficulties, the challenges that the teachers face during implementing it, and some strengths and the weakness part of the curriculum, and also the teachers' possible suggestions for the development of the curriculum. In terms of research design, this was a qualitative research design, and I employed interview technique. The data was collected through interviews of 7 secondary school English teachers who taught fifth grade students at 2 state schools of Çanakkale. At that time, while I was conducting this study, there were 2 students who are implementing this program, but however, now there are 3 schools, 1 more is added to. And a semi-structured interview was applied to the teachers. Sorry. Yes, in terms of a problem statement. In 2016 and 2018, an academic year, the new foreign language oriented fifth grade English curriculum was put into practice in volunteers pilot schools. But Minister of National Education didn't publish new foreign language oriented fifth grade curriculum in that year. You know, most of the time our programs put into practice all of a sudden and very top-down feature they have. This was another sample of this. This program was another sample of this. During the 2017 and 18 academic year, all of a sudden it started to be implemented in 681 schools all over the country, Turkey. In order to reach the purpose of the aims of the study, I set 4 research questions. The first one is, what are the general thoughts of the teachers about the general content of the curriculum? It was followed by the difficulties that the teachers face during the implementation of the study. If there are any problems, what are their problems and what are their possible suggestions to solve these problems? And the third one is what are the teachers' views on measurement and evaluation activities of the program? And the last one is, what are the views of teachers on teacher qualification, whether this program requires any teacher qualifications or not? If so, what are them? So settings and participants. The participants of the study were 7 English teachers. As I said before, 4 teachers from one school and 3 teachers from other school. And very quickly, demographic information. There were no male teacher. All of them are experienced ones. In terms of data collection process, a qualitative aspect, as I said before, and through semi-structured one-on-one interviews. When we come to the analyze, the collected data were analyzed qualitatively. A content analysis method was used to analyze and interpret the data. Findings are subdivided into 4 themes. The first one is the teachers' views on general, overall general content of the program. The second one is the challenges they face during the program, positive, negative effects, and the teachers' suggestions for the improvement of the program. And the third one is the teachers' opinions, again, on measurement and evaluation activities. The fourth one is the required teachers' qualification for the program. These themes were subdivided according to the opinions of the teachers. Here are some of the general headings of them. For example, let's look some of them. In general content, all of the teachers found it as an intensive one, and nearly all of them thought that it was above students' readiness. In terms of challenges, all of the teachers find their classes very crowded and not very suitable for this program. And some subjects are above students' level again. Measurement and an assessment part, having difficulty for measuring and speaking, especially in terms of speaking activity and then fluency part. And then teacher qualifications, the teacher should be active, energetic, high communication skills, etc. Now, teacher opinions and general content of the curriculum. All of the teachers think that the program is very crowded. As I said before, they have difficulties to finish all the units. Besides, most of them think that their students' readiness is not suitable for the program. There are some direct quotes from the teachers' sayings. The content of the program is very intensive and it is impossible to finish them all. The program has 40 units in total and each unit for each week, but it is not easy to finish a unit in a week. We need more time for some units. Another teacher says the content is very overcrowded and above students' academic level. It covers entire secondary school curriculum in 1 year, which is not very logical. Although there are 40 units, we are able to finish only 25 units of them. Due to the time concerns, I don't want to read all the quotes. I'm just moving on. The view of the teacher are generally that there are lots of objects and most of the achievements are related to reading comprehension or grammatical subjects. They think that there are numerous grammar topics in the program which require for more time. We can say that although they have some complaints about the intensity of the program, teachers mostly find the 5th grade foreign language oriented program as a successful one, and they think it should be continued with necessary revision. They said that their students' English level had improved so much. Almost all of the teachers express that their students need this course too, and they state that their students get bored due to the lacking of these courses. For example, I think lacking of music, art, and physical education courses is really a matter of for the students at that age. There should be music, art, or physical education course instead of science and maths course. Besides, hours of Turkish course should be increased and should go parallel to the grammar topics in English course. Okay, teacher opinions about the challenge they face while implementing it. According to teachers' opinions, it seems that the teachers have encountered quite a lot of difficulties in the implementing phase of it. The biggest problem that the teachers see for the implementation of the program is class size. They said that their class size is more than 40, sometimes even 50 students there are in the classes. Teacher expressed that crowded class result in problems with class management. Also, they said that they were unable to leave some time for each students. Last year, I was working in a school with less student numbers in classes, but this year I had really difficulty with crowded classes. I had problems with class management. In crowded classes, the shy students become much more hesitant. The reliability of the assessment can also be at risk in crowded classes because there are so many students and because desks are very close to each other due to the numerous numbers of the students. Another teacher again says, due to the big class size, it is getting harder for me to leave some time to each student. Whenever they raise their finger or have something to say, even once I got a complaint from one parent on this issue. She told me that her daughter went to speak more, but she could not, as I was not giving permission to her to do so. Unfortunately, this sometimes can be true because it is impossible to give each student change to talk, and this demotivates the students. I'm not reading all of them due to the time concerns again. Another important problem that the teacher stated was they didn't receive a course book till the second term. They had a program. They said that you have to now run this program, but they didn't even a course book. The first one was about to end when we received the course books. In order not to lose time, we used another course book and we like it so much. And another important problem that the teachers state that lacking of in-service training. Before the program, they didn't even get any in-service training about the program. They do it by themselves. They have to do it by themselves. At the beginning, I was totally unaware of the program. I did it on my way. I did not receive any training about it. We only participated in a brief informing meeting done by a teacher, but it was not enough. One of my friends, who is an English teacher too, told me that she only got the information about their school became pilot one on the day just before the academic year started. In terms of measurement and then testing activities of the curriculum, concerning it, the teachers are satisfied with it. In the first term, the students had 3 written exams and 3 performance grades. However, in the second term, due to the regulation change, the number of the written exams has been reduced too. And they also did some quiz. They said that they also did some quiz. Due to the crowded class, they had difficulties to test students' speaking abilities. It is for them impossible to do speaking exam one by one due to the class size. In our school, there are 10 classes in 5th grade, and it was very difficult to conduct speaking exam for us, so we decided not to do it. They cancel it. And we applied speaking exam to each student one by one, and it was very successful. In my opinion, it was important to be able to apply it because some students' speech performance can be higher than their written performance, so they gained and advanced by having speaking exam. We see that there are some different practices among the teachers. Some of them used speaking exams, some of them didn't use it, didn't conduct a speaking exam. In terms of teacher qualifications about the curricula, there were lots of overlapping points. Most of the teachers thought the teacher should be active, energetic. They should have good acting skills and a drawing skill, as the students pay much more attention to the lesson when the teachers have these qualifications. One of the teachers said, unfortunately, I have no skills such as acting or drawing. I wish I could, as I'm pretty sure that the students have more fun when the teachers have this kind of skills and abilities. entered English program. Is a curriculum that is exploring some.
Is there any problem? We cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, right now we hear you.
Okay, I think there was a problem with the internet connection.
About the connection, yeah, problem.
Yeah, sorry. Yes. Okay. Teacher claimed that it started very suddenly without enough preparation. There were not even any textbooks in their hands. Teacher find the curriculum as a top-down, highly top-down one, and told it that it was put into practice without necessary preparation had been made. It's for sure, we all know that it is inevitable that programs have not been well prepared and experience more problems during the implementation process. I don't want to read it. Time is running because the time is running. With the light of the teacher opinions, we can say that we should take into consideration that the difficulties the teacher faced, such as different readiness level of the students, need for in-source training of teachers, students' complaints about not having musics or other lessons such as music, art, physical education courses, such as like that. And
our time is over, Meral Hocam. Sorry for the interruption, but I just would like to remind you.
This is my last sentence. Okay. It will take only 10 seconds. Okay, to sum up, in this study, it was aimed at to evaluate effectiveness of the program language-oriented fifth grade English program. According to the result of this study, it can be said that although teachers face some difficulties, they found it very successful. It would be continued. It would not wrong to say it needs for some revision and adaptations. Okay, thank you very much for your listening. That's all.
Thank you for your participation, for your presentation, pardon. If we have any questions or comments, we can take them.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
You are welcome, my teacher, Mustafa Hocam.
Thank you. So let's go on with the next presentation by Necati Sönmez and Ece Zehir Topkaya. Their presentation is titled Role of Power Relations in Interpersonal Communications in Tertiary Level ELT Context. Okay.
Okay, I'm sharing my screen right now. I hope you can see the slide right now.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. Well, hi everyone. I'm a master's student at Çanakkale 18 Mart University at the moment, and I will be presenting the study that I and Professor Dr. Ece Zehir Topkaya conducted. Well, first of all, let's see the contents. Well, first, I'll begin with the background to the study, and then I'll move on to explain methodology, findings, discussion parts of our study, and then we'll finish with conclusion, implication, and references. Well, first of all, background to this study. Well, we need to first identify what is power. So explaining power is a difficult task because power is a complex construct. But here are some 4 descriptions on power that are most prominent in the relevant literature. First of all, power can be a person's successful attempt to get someone do something. So it's about exerting overt influence, as you can see. It's about the interaction between different groups of people, between the oppressor and the oppressed, between the powerful and the powerless. And also, we should focus on the term dominance here, because dominance can tell us who rules and who is silenced in a specific context. And its power can also be about shaping decisions through manipulation. Well, why should we study power in our own context, in the ELT context then? Well, dominance is the most insidious form of power. So therefore, abusive use of power may lead to absenteeism. Well, absenteeism is the suppression of alternatives. For example, you're a teacher in a classroom, and if you don't let your students pick what to learn, what kind of activities and materials to be used in the classroom, and you always decide on these, then you're using that power, and then you're abusing the power in the classroom. So your students are left without a voice. So, and as I said earlier, power is a complex and pervasive construct, and it is disguised in relationships. So identifying power in the relationships might, and interactions between students and teachers and the instructors in the tertiary level might give us some clues on how to improve teacher education. And research questions, these are our research questions. We have two research questions. First one is, what are the most particular power bases that are evident in tertiary level ELT contexts? And two, how do power bases affect the interaction between the students and the instructors? Well, first of all, I got a notification, but okay. Well, I'll first describe the power bases here because we use power bases to analyze the current relevant literature. And power bases are categorized under two main headings, which are first the pro-social power bases and anti-social. So as you can see, the first three power bases here, reward, referent, and expert powers, are pro-social, and the last two are anti-social power bases. Well, reward power basically is the ability to reward and give. So motivational speeches and showing respect to your students are considered as reward power. So you're using reward power in these cases. Referent power, on the other hand, is all about attractiveness and worthiness. So if your student comes up to you and says, well, I want to be like you, the teacher, and I shall behave like my teacher. So it means that you have referent power and because you're considered as worthy by your students. And expert power, on the other hand, is about having superior knowledge or ability in extremely specific areas. So a professor can be considered as having an expert power because a professor has lots of works and experiences in that specific field. Coercive power, on the other hand, is about punishment for non-conformity. So forcing a disruptive student to leave your classroom can be considered as coercive power because non-conformity here is the disruption that student makes, and you punish that student for it. Legitimate power, on the other hand, is the power that is given to you, the teacher. So when we think about the hierarchy, the people up high in the hierarchy will give you this legitimate power. So when you have legitimate power, for example, you can use this power to create rules for your own classroom. So then you can use coercive power to punish those students who are disruptive. So they cause non-conformity in your classroom. So legitimate power can be used for good intentions and bad intentions. So how do power bases are researched in the relevant literature? Well, first, quantitative means are most of the time I saw that the studies use Teacher Power Use Scale by Schroed and others, 2007. It combines all the power bases and it reveals the interaction between teachers and students. So it's a very useful scale in this matter. And qualitative means semi-structured interviews are highly adapted and diary studies are conducted as well. So for methodology, well, we use integrative review research because integrative review research enables us to generate new knowledge about the topic by critiquing, synthesizing, and reviewing the relevant literature on power bases. And integrative reviews identify the gaps in the literature and the need for future research. So that's why it's important for us to adapt integrative review research. So these are our materials. So I'm not going to explain any details on this. So we have 13 articles here. So that's it. So for data analysis, we benefit from inductive content analysis. We first made sense of the data by reading on and on again every 13 article. And then we started open coding process. Then we grouped and categorized our codes. And then we created themes and general explanations for the themes. And then this last process is the reporting, the analysis, of course. So also for reliability issues, we had an extensive discussion on finalizing the themes and codes. For findings, excuse me, I will do like this. So you can see the slideshow, right? Right now. Okay. For findings, I categorize the findings into two tables. First one is the pro-social power basis. Well, for pro-social power basis, first of all, we can talk about the reward power. And I'm just going to touch upon the most important themes occurred in our analysis. So here, extrinsic motivation for reward power can be considered as important because when students were extrinsically motivated by their teacher, I mean, when the teacher used his reward power, then the students felt proud and the teacher affirmed and complimented to students' answers. For referent power, power sharing theme is important here because the teacher who uses referent power makes the students be active in the classroom. I mean, students become active in the classroom when they see that, their teachers are worthy and attractive, but not in a physical way, actually. So referent power is always associated with expert power in that sense. And also, students feel good about themselves through shared control, trust, and intimacy. Referent power paves way for shared control, trust, and intimacy. For expert power, on the other hand, teacher as omniscient theme is important here. So when students see their teachers as all-knowing factors, they believe that, step-by-step, clear and explicit instructions occur in the classroom when teacher has the expert power. So for antisocial power basis, for coercive power, instructor's absolute authority theme is important here. So students, when coercive power is extended in the classroom and used extensively in the classroom by the instructor, students indicate that they fear to ask questions. So there's fear of failing if you ask questions and if you do something bad. So students always think about these. Well, there's also in a classroom where coercive power is extensively used, there is teacher talk domination in the classroom. For legitimate power, extensive teacher power and acceptance of authority themes are important. Well, extensive teacher power is when instructors use legitimate power extensively, then students realize that they have no control over what subjects to be learned and studied in the classroom and what methods to use. As I said earlier at the beginning, like activities, materials, etc. Then also turn-taking is totally managed by the teacher in a classroom where legitimate power is extensively adapted and used by the teacher. And also there's this acceptance of authority theme, which is quite interesting finding. And I can say that in one of the studies, students believe that the teachers, the instructors should use legitimate power. They should be strict, but at the same time, they should be fair. So I'll explain this in the discussion section, why they believe so. So for discussion part, so first question is, we should ask in the discussion is, what is the crucial reason that students embrace their instructors and extensive legitimate power? So this may be because of the cultural background of the students. So students may consider older people and people who are in authoritative roles should be considered as people who should be respected at the same time. So students might believe in this, how can I say, fact or opinion. And also Hofstede studies Hofstede studies actually prove this. So can coercive and legitimate powers be used for good intentions? Well, in this matter, awareness is important. So people who have the knowledge also have the power. But at some points in our lives, I mean, as teachers, we may not realize that we have some kind of power to affect students in a negative or in a positive way. So this is why it's important to have a realization towards what kinds of legitimate and coercive powers we have and how can we use them for good intentions in the classroom. So thirdly, is reward power always beneficial? Should every teacher use it? Well, in this matter, this is also an interesting discussion here, because legitimate power can dominate reward power, because students can associate the rewards with their compliance to their instructors. So they may not see them as actual rewards. They may see them as rewards for their compliance, for their allegiance to their teacher. So the reward may become something part of the legitimate power. So for completion and implication part, well, I can clearly say that pro-social power bases like reference, reward, and expert influence language education in a positive way, but anti-social power bases like legitimate, coercive have negative impact on the process. And here, self-reflection is the key. I mean, as I said earlier, we may not realize what kind of power bases and powers we have. So therefore, we always need to self-reflect on our own practices and what we do in the classroom during the day. So self-reflection becomes a key important element in the power relations studies. And we can self-reflect to promote democratic learning environment and questioning in the students. And also, lastly, further qualitative studies are needed to explore how legitimate and coercive powers can be used for good intentions that would enhance English language teaching contexts. And this is also an important factor because in all of the studies, nearly all of the studies, legitimate and coercive powers are used as ways to dominate the students. But legitimate power is not something that is yours. It is given to you. And legitimate power can turn into coercive power when you use it for bad intentions, for punishing, for example. So that's why we need further analysis of these two power bases specifically. So these are our references. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for your presentation and inspiring study.
Thank you.
Any questions we have or comments?
Thank you, Semin Hocam.
Okay. If you don't have any questions, we may go on with our next presentation, which is by Zekeriya Durmaz and Semiha Kahyalar Gürsoy. Their study is entitled An Investigation of Psychological Immunity from EFL Lecturers' Perspectives. Pardon, I think it is a Dilay Işık.
Yes, yeah.
Sorry. It is their study is entitled Comparative Analysis of EFL course books in Turkey in Terms of Intercultural Elements. True?
Yes, hocam.
Okay, you may start your presentation.
Let me share my screen first, but before that, I would like to introduce myself.
Okay.
Can you see my screen, by the way?
Yes, we can see your screen. No
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Dilay Işık. I am a PhD student at Pamukkale University. I'm also an instructor at Başkent University. I conducted this study last year with the course books. It's a course book analysis, as you can see from the title, of course. Let me start my presentation very quickly. With the globalization, of course, the lingua franca status of the English has become a quite powerful feature, and this enabled people to communicate with each other. So it's not enough just to know the language right now. We have an undeniable connection between the language and the culture, and because of this connection, we have a number of non-native speakers, again, because of the globalization again. Monoculture versus multiculture. Right now, this feature of English has created a multicultural context in all over the world. And this is the reason why we should have intercultural competence along with the language proficiency itself. Okay, again, can we separate culture from the ELT? It's not so possible because as Bayram suggests, language and culture cannot be treated separately in the discussion of language theory and practice. All the items that were brought to English classes as instructors or the learners, they all represent a part of culture we share, and also we learn the culture itself, again, with the language itself. So what do we mean by intercultural communication? What is role in ELT? Learners need to communicate in international setting right now because it's a globalized world. They need to have necessary tools so that they can actually survive in a natural environment, which is based on non-native speakers right now instead of native speakers, because the non-native speakers have majority in the world. We should have a more holistic perspective about the local culture and other cultures as well, and we can show this dominance with the language use. Okay, the role of the course book, as we all know, it's an essential part of an English lesson lecture. So we also design choose the course books in accordance with this intercultural competence, so that they can actually help learners to evolve in this context. So in the case of Turkey, I will briefly explain it. We have governmental schools and private schools, and the context of these two kinds of schools are different. In governmental schools, the course books are pre-designed and published by the Minister of Education, but in private schools, it's not obligatory for them to use this governmental school course books, but they can actually choose another course book for their lectures. In this case, most of the schools actually choose an internationally published books. So in the literature review, we have several different focuses, as you can see from the context, with several different researchers. Some of these researchers focused on actually the local course books and compare them with international course books, which I did actually. Some of them just examined the locally published course books and shared them, compared them with other grade level course book, governmental published course books. So in an international context, again, this is a very high topic in the literature, by the way, especially in the last 20 years. So you can see I choose 3 different researchers. One of them made this investigation in terms of Iranian context, again with Iranian and international course books. One is from Finnish context, Finnish course books, locally published course books, and international published, and the other one is German. So in my context, my aim is to analyze Oxford Discovery 2, 3, and 4, which are used in many public schools, private schools in Turkey. And I chose 5th, 6th, and 8th grades elementary education course books. The reason for this choice is that they are CFR levels are quite similar. So I chose they will comply with each other. And I investigate those books in terms of local, intercultural, and target cultural elements. When we talk about local, I aim to investigate Turkish culture. International culture is the non-Anglo-Saxon culture, like Indian, Finnish, Chinese, the outer circle countries. Target culture is the culture of the English speakers who are using English as a native language. So I use UN's framework, and this framework has 4 subcategories: products, practices, perspective, and persons. Products are the actual items that represent the culture. Practices are their daily practice, daily routine, let's say. Perspective is mostly on beliefs and celebration, special days, and persons are the actual person and individuals that belong to that culture. And lastly, in order to have a mixed study and a better understanding of the problem, I conducted this research. I conducted a semi-structured interview with English teachers who actually use those course books in their lectures. So let me introduce my research questions. To what extent is cultural diversity represented in ELT course books? Is there any difference between ELT course books in terms of cultural component in accordance with UN's framework, which are 4? What are the Turkish secondary school teachers' attitudes toward the cultural elements in ELT course books? What do teachers think? So in terms of methodology, as I make a course book analysis, this is a descriptive content analysis. And for the semi-structural interviews, again, used to see the actual users of the course books and their point of view. So my research design is mixed. I have analyzed 6 different course books, 1 framework, an interview with the teachers. So again, when we checked the framework, we have UN's intercultural competence, communicative competence model, product, practice, perspective, person. and subcategories: target, home culture, and international culture. And as you can see, the materials I used, I analyzed in terms of the course books and the writers. The first three are internationally published. The last three are locally published. The participants, I interviewed with 9 English language teachers between different ages and different experiences, all of whose native language is Turkish. And so let me go to let me check the findings. So this is actually the overall disturbance of the cultural items. As you can see, when we check the Turkish ones, the most concrete items are in home culture, local culture. But when we checked international published course books, as you can see, the emphasis is on international culture, not the target culture. This is actually the significant part of the study. We will talk about this, but let me go into details a little bit in terms of the framework. As you can see, in terms of the products, we again have a majority in home culture, and in the Happy English, the 5th grade one, as we can see, a small balance between target and international culture, upswing with, again, home culture. In, again, Discover course books, the emphasis on except one is again in international culture. So in terms of person, we didn't have many items included because I excluded the characteristic names like Ali, Ayşe. I didn't say it's a representation of the home culture. And that's the reason why we use individual persons like Atatürk or Gandhi. So again, the focus is on, we can say, home culture on course books, local published course books. And again, Discovery course books, it's on international culture. Practices, we have the same finding with similar exceptions. And perspectives, again, they're the secondary school course books. They didn't, I think, want to include so much perspective kind of elements, intercultural elements. So we are really low in number in this part. So when we talk about the perspectives of the teachers towards the course book, you can see that target cultural components are positive. Home cultural components are in a kind of negative way, and international components show a balanced position. And 77% of the teachers thought that they actually increase the competence of the intercultural competence of the learners. So I included some of the opinions of the teachers, but I'm skipping that part because of the time restrictions. So let me go back to the discussion part. When we compared my findings with the literature, I can see that in terms of home culture, local culture part, the findings comply with the other ones. But in terms of the international culture, I think we can say that the world is about to show a small change, because the internationally published course books compared to the other findings of the findings in the literature actually based on to more target culture, Anglo-Saxon culture items like the jakes or the American flag. They were really quite important, but right now the course books started to include more items that the students can find themselves from. They can see their own culture represented, which is quite important because it increases their own learning motivation and familiarity with the other cultures, which is quite essential because, as I stated before, they will see non-native speakers more often than they have a chance to communicate with native speakers of English. In the conclusion part, the Discover 3 has the most number of cultural items, while Discover 2 has the least. The Ministry of Education approved course books upswing include the most number of cultural items. There is a balance between the distribution of cultural elements. In accordance with UN's framework, perspective, person, and product contents are undervalued in all course books, and the teachers are mostly positive from cultural perspectives. Of course, I had several limitations, but in terms of the implications, the course books are key elements for both the teachers and students in learning the language. teachers should offer different aspects of the target target language, from linguistics to culture, if the course book does not support these. And the teacher must keep in mind that it is not enough only to be linguistically competent, but also they should be competent in intercultural context. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, I can take, or I don't want to take your time any further.
Thank you for your presentation, Dilay Hocam. If you have any questions or comments, we can take them. Thank you. Okay, so let's go on with our next presentation, which is by Zekeriya Durmaz, Semiha Kahyalar Gürsoy, entitled An Investigation of Psychological Immunity from EFL Lecturers' Perspectives. Okay, Hocam. You may share your screen with us.
I'm sharing, yeah.
Thank you.
I assume that you can see my screen now.
Now we can see it.
Great. Hello, everyone. This is Zekeriya Durmaz. Just a second. Okay. This is Zekeriya Durmaz from Hasan Kalyoncu University. I'm an instructor at Hasan Kalyoncu University School of Foreign Languages. We have prepared this study with dear Semiha Kahyalar Gürsoy. Here, I would like to thank her a lot for her invaluable contribution to this study. And also, I would like to share my feelings. And I am a graduate of Çanakkale 18 Mart University in 2010. And I feel grateful to be here with well-respected teachers in this learning environment. Yeah, our topic is an investigation of psychological immunity from EFL lecturers' perspectives. And we hear immunity nowadays during COVID-19 a lot, but here the immunity is used metaphorically. Yeah, it is borrowed from biology, but it's not related to biology. We will focus on the psychological immunity. Here, if we go to, yeah. Before we will talk about teacher immunity in detail, but let's first talk about the challenges and the teachers that experience nowadays in this challenging period. And we as teachers, we are evolving profoundly, and research proves this actually. And we are vulnerable to a variety of difficulties nowadays. In recent years, we have to evaluate ourselves and we have to cope with these difficulties. And here, the researcher, Phil Heber, believes that, yes, teacher immunity plays an important role during these challenging periods. And so teachers may show this immunity maladaptively or productively. We will go in detail here we will talk about the metaphorical aspect of it. And OECD reports show that, yes, teachers have lack of professional development or trainings. And if they can improve themselves, so their teacher immunity, psychological immunity, may possibly increase as well. So in terms of professional development, we approach this issue. And our purpose was, the first one was that we wanted to explore the EFL instructors' teacher immunity level first. And we also wanted to identify the relationship between instructors' teacher immunity and age, gender, degree, department, and these other independent variables. And finally, we wanted to find out the factors that may have an impact on teacher immunity. What impacts teacher immunity? We tried to find out that, and we asked 3 questions. The first 2 questions are asked within quantitative approach, and the last question was qualitative. So here we can say that we conducted a mixed method study, and yeah. Why this study is important? We believe that, yes, there are a lot of studies, very great studies on motivation, beliefs, burnout, resilience, and they are also the components of language teacher immunity. And in recent years, we can see these studies, but we realize that quite few studies have been conducted on language teacher immunity, because this is a novel concept, novel phenomenon coined by Heber and Dernier. Yeah, Here we have to talk about motivation and teacher motivation because it is directly connected to the immunity of teachers, and teacher identity, their emotions, their senses are important. That's why we focused on them as well. And basically, we studied on language teacher immunity. Of course, we connected it to the professional development basing on complex dynamic systems theory. Maybe not fully, but partially we adopted the theory of complexity. Shortly, if we talk about motivation, we will divide it into two categories, actually. Yeah, the contemporary ones and the former ones. We all know, we heard about Maslow's, Freud's, and Skinner's studies on motivation. They have inner forces. We talk about the stimuli here, and the motivation is integrative and the instrumental, so from inner and external factors. And recently, that is more important maybe, Bernie, for example, and Otto, they talk about the complex and dynamic state of it. And finally, if we focus on the Larson-Freeman study, she focuses on the complex, dynamic, and adaptive aspect of it. So that is important for us as well. And if we shortly talk about teacher motivation in specific and identity and sense of self, yeah, we as teachers, we frequently feel like we are on a psychological roller coaster. We go up and down in our daily routines, in our classroom, in our psychology. So, and many things affect us as teachers. So it is multifaceted. And it's connected because it's complex and it changes, it evolves all the time. That's why it is dynamic, but it changes, as I said, so we can adopt it. Yeah. And if we specifically focus on language teacher immunity, it's a robust armoring system. It's an armor and it protects us from the burdens in a day and the challenges teachers have. So it helps us to find an equilibrium. So we balance our daily routines as a result of this. And also our aim is to increase the effectiveness of the practices in our classroom. That's why in the end, at the end of the day, it will affect the classroom practices as well. And here coined the term, as I said, and basically he uttered that language teacher immunity manifests itself in two basic forms: productively, which is positive, and maladaptively, which is negative. But somehow we have immunity in our psychological construction. If we go further, talk about immunity more, yes, here we can divide it into two categories, actually: immunity from students' perspective, immunity from teachers' perspective. Yes, my dear teacher, Semha Gürsoy, also studied on student immunity or learner immunity in terms of student aspect, but mostly researchers focused on the immunity in terms of teachers' perspective. If we go in detail and give you in a table, yes, on the left, very shortly, yes, Gürsoy, Ataran, and Savarchi, they conducted studies on learner immunity. The first one is in Turkey, but the others are in Iranian contexts. Our focus, language teacher immunity. Yes, as you can see, again, we have Iranian, we have Turkish, we have Korean studies. And more recently, Arif Hoca, I guess he's here with us, and they conducted with the colleague, and they very similar results, actually. We will talk about it as well. And yeah, let's go further. And language teacher immunity has components. Teacher.
We cannot hear you, Zekeriya Hocam.
Teaching self-efficacy, attitudes towards teaching, copying. Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Right.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay. I guess there's a problem with the connection.
Yes.
And the classroom effectivity, burnout, resilience, and openness to change constitute the components of the theoretical components of the language teacher immunity. And Hever categorizes language teacher immunity in basically in global 4 forms, but there are some types of teacher immunity as given on the right. I'm not going to go to the details of these archetypes in detail. Yeah, let's go to basically, I will talk about 2 qualities of them. If a teacher is productively immunized, this teacher stands up against emotionally draining expectations of teaching. On the other hand, if a teacher is maladaptively immunized, this teacher feels inadequate academically, inferior professionally, and skeptical about their classroom practices. This is the basic quality of immunity, and the rest is below. I'm skipping this part as well because of the time. The professional development plays an important role on language teacher immunity, and these studies I shared here prove this actually. Yeah. As I said, we adopted the complexity theory by Larson Freeman because language teacher immunity is complex. Language teacher immunity is adaptive. It is nonlinear. It changes. That's why we adopted this theory. I'm not going to go in detail about the complexity theory because I want to focus on the findings of our study. It was a non-experimental study, and it was descriptive research, and we conducted a mixed method. In the quantitative part, yes, there were 117 EFL instructors at 6 universities in Turkey, and we used Hever's scale. It's a newly produced scale by Hever. So there were 39 items there, and we used SPSS program and the other test and analysis you can see there. And in the second part, in the second phase of the study, we asked our instructors 15 open-ended questions. Again, these questions were adapted from Hever's study. And here in this phase, we included 11 instructors from the same universities, and we conducted the thematic analysis on the coding. I will talk about the results. Here is the procedure of the studies. I guess there is no need to go details here. And yeah, if we shortly talk about the interpretation of the results, here I highlighted the basic ones. You see the highlighted ones are the basic ones. Yeah, the number of female instructors were higher. Yeah, the majority of them were female, and yeah, a great number of the participants were doing MA or have completed their MA, and we included English language teaching department instructors and the ones who worked at School of Foreign Languages or School of Languages. We combined them all there. And here in our universities, we had state universities and foundation universities. We compared them there as well. Yeah. Our study, the results showed us that our teachers, I will here the results. We asked at the very beginning, what level of immunity do EFL teachers have? We got this result. They were at a midpoint of halfway immunity with 3.76 average points. And it's very similar to some other studies. And also teaching self-efficacy got the highest mean score in our study, and the resilience got the lowest one. Although it's lowest, it's not that low actually. The results are satisfactory, we can say. And our participants represented self-efficacious qualities, and we can see that they can cope with adversities with a high mean level, and they feel affectional towards their teaching, their students. They are open to change, but slightly not that open, so it's not that high. And they enjoy teaching, yeah, we can say this, and they feel refreshed at school in their profession, and they say that, yeah, we feel resilient in our profession. And the other quantitative results, you see, we found a significant difference in terms of gender, degree, and the university type they work for. I mean, state university or foundation university. Pınar Hocam, how many minutes do I have? Sorry.
1 minute we have.
Oh my God.
1 minute.
All right, so this was the answer to the question 2. Let's go very quickly more. And the qualitative data, as I said, 11 participants, we have asked open-ended questions. Yeah. And we got these codes as a result of the quantitative results. Yes, classroom affectivity got the highest coins, so they uttered much more than the others. And the profession choice, the lowest frequency got here. Yeah, well, teacher, the word teacher, we wanted to see this, what word was uttered most frequently. Not surprisingly, teacher got the highest, and students followed it. Teaching and think got a similar annotation. I'm not going to go to the characteristics of them. This was the last question. Yeah, if we sum it up. As I said, more recently, Arif Hoca conducted study and they got moderate level of immunity. It's very similar to our study, the results of our study. Deniz Hoca, Deniz Saydam, yes, got 4.7 starting point of the active immunity, and Erdem Hoca, and they received maladaptive behaviors. I here added only the Turkish ones because we can compare them here. And our study was halfway immunity result got it. So as I said, it's very similar to the most contemporary one. Yeah, if we finish, age cannot be seen as a variable that has effect on language teacher immunity. And the departments they work, ELT or CFL, no. But the level of immunity differs on gender, academic degree, MA, BA, or PhD, and whether they work at state or foundation university, again, changes according to language teacher immunity. In short, we can conclude that if teachers participate to trainings, professional development trainings, if they pursue a lifelong learner, being a lifelong learner, even though we have difficult times, and if they ensure collegiality in their academic life, their teacher immunity will be affected positively. Some implications, maybe we can skip this part very quickly because we have some limitations. Data collection period was in COVID-19 period. That's why our data may not got the precise results. And the tools we used were newly produced by Heber. Maybe in different contexts, it will give different results. Yeah, I can finish here. I don't want to take a lot of time more, Pınar Hocam. Thank you very much for your attention. Hopefully, I tried to speak very quickly but clearly. Hopefully, it was fine here.
Thank you for your presentation, Zekeriya Hocam.
If we have questions, we can get.
If you have any questions or comments, we can have them.
Yeah.
Okay. Very informative. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
So we can go on with the next presentation, which is by Cezehir Topkaya and Hatice Sezgin, titled A Genre Analysis of Lecture Introductions and Implications for Note-Taking.
Hello, everyone. I'll be doing the presentation. So let me share my screen. Here it comes. Okay. So I hope you can see my
Yes, we can
PowerPoint
see your
presentation.
screen, Hocam.
So first of all, I would like to introduce myself. I am Hatice Sezgin, a foreign language instructor at Selçuk University, but also a PhD student at Çanakkale 18 Mart University. My supervisor here, Ece Hocam, is a professor of ELT and also a faculty member at Çanakkale 18 Mart University. And our study is titled as a journal analysis of lecture introductions and implications for note-taking. And here is the outline. We start with the introduction of some basic concepts from the literature, and then we are going to continue with methodology, findings, conclusion, and implications. And to start with, we are going to focus on the EAP context, and as a branch of English for specific purposes, EAP instruction aims at providing EFL learners with the instruction on the specific language and the language skills learners need for their studies or to conduct research in academic settings. And the specific language is the key point here. So for this reason, EAP research mostly focuses on, I can't move my slides. Yeah, so EAP research mostly focuses on what is specific about this language and also what the specificity requires to design its instruction. And at this point, we refer to genres. So simply put, we can define genres as text types, but for a more comprehensive definition, genres are ways of recognizing, responding to, acting meaningfully and consequentially within, and also helping to reproduce recurrent situations. So we analyze genres through genre analysis, which is, as put by Hyland, as interpreting academic texts in their social contexts. So genre analysis tries to provide the readers with the genre knowledge of the texts. And so our specific genre for this study is the lectures. And as we have put before, as I have mentioned before, EAP focuses on providing learners with the skills they'll need for their studies. And listening to lectures is one of the most important prerequisites for EAP learners. We are going to talk about listening to lectures, but just the listening activity alone can be very challenging for EFL learners, mostly resulting from their lack of proficiency in the target language. But as for higher education context, listening to lectures is not enough for higher education learners. They also need to take notes as they listen to the lectures. So as for note taking, note-taking during lectures is considered as one of the defining aspects of higher education learning. And some researchers report a correlation between note-taking performance and academic performance, which makes it a key skill at EAP level. So for EAP contexts. So because it's a key skill, as I have just said, there are various studies on the instructional note-taking skills. And at this point, we can talk about some organizational systems that are developed to enable learners with note-taking ability. And the first one is the outline or linear format. Here is picture an image for this format, and this goes with the flow of the lecture. Students take notes in accordance with the flow of the lecture, and this is the most common one because it's not always easy to predict or foresee the organization of the lecture, especially when we talk about spoken genres. The second one is charts. This one is here is a image for this one. This is more appropriate for categorizable information. So we can use columns and rows for these. Another one is diagrams or mind maps. As you can see in the picture, we use symbols and we use texts and we show their relations with symbols, etc. with this one. And the last one, the Cornell Method from the Cornell University. In this one, we have 3 sections, 2 columns and 1 row below. The first column is used for cues, keywords, maybe some questions. And at the main space at the second column, the students, the learners take notes, the important notes, the relevant information for the cues part. And at the bottom line, at the bottom row,
No, we cannot hear you.
I was muted.
Now
by the
we hear
host,
you.
it said, but I think you can hear me now.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. So these are some note-taking strategies, and the information is from these 2 studies, and the images are from this link. So we talked about lectures as specific genres, and accordingly we thought that we can use genre-based instruction for the instruction of note-taking skills. So genre-based instruction, or shortly GBI, aims at increasing learners' knowledge of the rhetorical structure as well as the linguistic qualities of a specific genre. For the studies conducted so far, or for the practical format, it is mostly employed for writing instruction, but there's no reason for such limitation because, as Swales puts, genre is a distinguishable category of discourse of any type. It can be spoken or written. So as we have mentioned before, lectures as a spoken form of genre form a critical element of academic success for university students. Therefore, they require the knowledge of the organization of their field-specific discourse for successful comprehension of lectures. Based on this information, we have identified 2 objectives for the present study. The first is that analyzing the introduction parts or non-authentic lectures from an academic note-taking course book to look for rhetorical moves and mood structure that might help learners during note-taking. And based on this information, we aim at proposing a GBI framework. And 2 research questions we have formed are, what are the rhetorical moves in the introduction parts of the non-authentic lectures? And what are some lexical items frequently used in the introduction parts of these non-authentic lectures, introduction parts, of course. As for data collection, we formed the corpus using the introduction parts of 30 non-authentic lectures, and these lectures were from a course book series, EAP course book series intended for note-taking instruction, titled as Lecture Ready from Oxford University Press, and I have some visuals for this course. It's a 3-level course. And the scripts of the lectures were obtained from the Oxford University Press website. And the formed corpus from these lecture introductions consisted of 2,850 words. Here is a chart, a table showing the distribution of each the lectures in each level. So there were 5 units in each level of this book, and each unit consisted of 2 chapters. So we can say that each level of the book consisted of 10 the 10 lectures created for instructional purposes. And this shows the distribution of these. As we put before, outline or the linear format is the most commonly used one, employed one, and it was the most frequently used in the series as well. As for data analysis, we mentioned that we conducted a genre analysis, and for this we employed the framework created by Lee for lecture introductions, which is a 3-move and 10-step framework, and these moves and steps were coded as presented in this column, in the last column. As for data analysis, we employed both qualitative and quantitative methods. As for moves and steps, we employed a manual coding using MaxQDA 2020, and the coded segments were presented in crosstabs for each lecture with their ordering. We use the crosstabs function for this one. And with the coded segments for each step, we formed small corpora. And I'm going to present the findings from these analysis now. This table shows an outline of the move structure for each of the 30 lecture introductions. And for the first move, it was present in 29 or 30 lectures. And as you can see from the table, the first step and in 29 lectures was the first step, move 1, step 1. As for the second move, it was present in all 30 lectures, and step 1 for move 2 was in the second position in 19 and in the third position in 10 of the lectures. And for step 2, it was followed by either 1 or 2 of the other steps in move 2 in 16 of the lectures. As for the last and third move, it was the least frequent one, being present in 17 of the lectures. As for the third step within this move, it was in the second position in 9 of the lectures. As I have said, we have tried to draw a relationship between the note-taking strategies and the move structure of the lectures. But as you can see from this, I have put 3 lectures created to teach diagram as the note-taking strategy, but we can see there are no similarities for the move structure for these 3 lecture introductions. A similar case for 4 lectures created for charting strategy. And again, to show that there is no correlation between the move structure and the note-taking strategy, here is the move structure for 3 different note-taking strategies, which can be pretty much similar. As for the obligatory and optional status of the steps, this table presents the findings obtained from the study conducted by Lee, who created this framework. He identified moves as optional and obligatory based on the frequency of them. The obligatory ones were present in all lectures, and semi-obligatory ones were present in more than half of the lectures, and the optional ones were present in less than half of the lectures. And this is Lee's findings, and here are our findings. We can see a similar case in terms of the steps being obligatory or optional. As for the corpus analysis findings, this table shows an overview of the items in the corpus and the subcorpora formed for each move and step. This list presents the most frequent items for the whole lecture, for the whole corpus. And we can see that most frequent nouns were today, people, and adjective. As for adjectives, we can see good ranks the first. And for 2 to 3 gram items, we can see that going to do get started are some frequent phrases. If we continue with the subcorpora formed for each move, I start with the first one, which is warming up. And these are some lexical items used to realize this function, warming up function. We see that the frequent nouns can be morning, everyone, and we see that good is a frequent adjective. And for 2 to 3 gram items, we can see that get started, good morning are some frequent phrases. And here are some examples, some excerpts from the scripts. We see why these items are the frequent items from these examples. As for the second move, which was for setting up the lecture framework, these are the items, lexical items used to realize this communicative function, setting up the lecture framework. So we see that today, or as for adverbs, we can see some sequencing adverbs like then, first. And of course, for phrases, 2 to 3 gram phrases, we see that going to talk about I want to are some frequent phrases. And here are some examples.
Teacher Hocam, our time is
Yes.
already over.
Okay, that's why I'm going more than fast, but let
Sorry
me
for
get to
the
the conclusion
interruption.
part. Let me get
Okay.
to the conclusion part then very quickly.
Okay, please summarize.
So as I said before, there are similarities between non-authentic and authentic lectures in terms of mood structure, but we cannot draw a relationship between the move pattern and the intended note-taking strategy. And as for corpus findings, the most frequent items in moves and steps present a correlation between the meanings and the communicative functions of the steps. Accordingly, we have offered a genre-based instruction framework with an emphasis on the lexical cues. We used Osman's framework for GBI, genre-based instruction, and here is the activities for all 4 stages for lectures and note-taking. So I want to talk about these, but because our time is over, here are 2 limitations. The corpus was compiled only with 1 course book, and the representation of the lectures for different note-taking strategies was not equal. And here are the references. As the corresponding author, if you have any questions, you can email me. And I'm sorry for taking so much time.
Okay, no problem. Thank you for your detailed presentation. It was very informative.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you have any questions or comments, we can take them. Any comments or questions? No, I think. Thank you once again, Hocam. Let's move on to the next presentation by Dilara Somuncu, Mehmet Bardakçı, Bilge Deniz Çankaya, which is titled Coping Strategies Employed by Student Teachers During the COVID-19 Conversion to Online Learning Teaching in Turkish EFL Context, Correlations with Motivation, Stress, and Well-Being. Okay, we can
Hocam,
see
thank you very
this
much.
screen.
Okay, just I'm trying to arrange the presentation page. Okay, I guess you can all see and hear me.
Yes, we can see and hear you.
Okay, Hocam, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank for this nice organization for giving us the chance for the presentation. With my colleagues, with my professor Mehmet Bardakçı and with my colleague Bilge Deniz Çankaya, we wanted to conduct a study about the coping strategies employed by the student teachers during this unfortunate COVID-19 conversion to online learning and teaching in Turkish EFL context. The outline of my presentation today will be mainly the introduction part, methodology, findings, and the conclusion. Before talking about the methodology and the other parts, I would like to give some brief information about the concepts that we are going to talk now. If we can imagine that teachers, students have already really heavy workloads and time pressures and some difficult roles in their life, and unfortunately, the sources of teacher and student stress have multiplied with the advent of COVID-19. And the situation got more complicated with this rapid conversion to online delivery of education for the teachers and the students because they were not prepared for this emergency situation, unfortunately. And apart from maintaining the education online, there were lots of concerns for both students, teachers, and parents, like health concerns for oneself and the loved ones, and social and physical distancing, travel restrictions. We have all experienced these things, and it was really a huge burden for a normal person, and it had some extra disadvantages for the teachers and the students as well. And we cannot deny that life with COVID-19 has suddenly and unavoidably became more difficult and complicated for everyone. including the pre-service language teachers. And these ideas about the student psychology, teacher psychology, and the disadvantages came together with the COVID-19 pandemic, just triggered the question for us that how are student teachers coping in the midst of the crisis as education systems are disrupted? Mainly in this presentation, the main concerns will be about the stress, well-being, and the coping strategies. And in general, psychological studies, we come across the variable of stress a lot, and it has been recently studied a lot in the SLA studies and foreign language studies as well. And it can be defined as a psychological reaction to environmental conditions, which we call as stressors that produce a variety of effects, including physical arousal and threats to well-being.
Dilara Hocam, sorry for the interruption,
hocam.
but we cannot see your other slides. Can you move on to the other slides?
Actually, I have moved. I'm on the right screen right now.
I
maybe.
just see just one slide on the screen right now.
Okay, so can you see that I'm moving between the slides? No, you cannot see. I
just shared one page. That's why.
Okay. So that was my mistake.
Yeah. Can we change the slides, please?
Okay. Just sorry again for this inconvenience on my side. Sorry again for this disruption. Okay.
Now we can see. Okay.
Okay. So as I just said, this was the slide that I was talking about, the general problems, and the problems came together with the COVID-19 for teachers and the students. And we can define stress as a psychological reaction to environmental conditions, stressors that produce a variety of effects, including physical arousal and threats to well-being. And coping is the process of responding to a stressor using one or more available techniques or strategies. And we can say that it is an important determinant of teachers and students' psychological adjustment and well-being. And with COVID-19 pandemic, of course, we witnessed a period of heightened psychological stress, unfortunately. According to Truman and Leponime, the ongoing COVID-19 crisis has been, and maybe probably will continue to be, both a massive challenge and a learning experience for the global education community and language teachers, language learners, and pre-service language teachers as well. So in most cases, teachers and students have not been trained in the necessary technical and pedagogical skills to integrate digital technology instruction, and it was the situation in our Turkish EFL context as well. And when we also think about that, these pre-service language teachers at those times, during the emergency times and still, they were the students, and at the same time, they are the prospective teachers. They had a vision of being a teacher in mind, and they experienced this COVID-19 pandemic situation with different psychological issues, together with being a student and also together with being a prospective teacher. And Petri identifies the additional stressors in the education systems, and the two items are quite available for the pre-service language teachers, we can say. The first, for example, stressor is that teachers without resources to discuss pandemic and uncertainties with their learners, and who are scrambling to go digital without much support and training, and learners who are highly anxious and lonely and unable to focus and worried about having a non-natural closure to the end to the academic year. And we have the parents' perspective here and the relationship between teacher, student, and parent relationship, and the collaborative learning problems in this challenging online situation, unfortunately. We already know that teaching has its own psychological patterns in its existence, like stress and well-being, and pre-service language teachers experience the same psychological patterns in their learning to teach process, we can say. And COVID-19 pandemic added new psychological issues to teaching and learning platforms, and these were triggered by this emergent conversion to online learning and teaching education. And by considering the influence of these new challenges on student teachers' learning to teach process, the present study mainly investigated the coping strategies employed by student teachers during this online learning teaching process. And we also wanted to investigate the correlations between coping strategies, stress, and well-being, with a brief inquiry into the predicting effects of these variables on the employment of coping strategies in this part of the study, because we hope to improve the study with other statistical analysis and qualitative designs. And we can say that the coping strategies employed by student teachers and the other psychological foundations, like stress and well-being, may be the key factors determining the academic achievement in teacher education programs.
Can you turn off your microphone, please? Yusuf Hocam. Thank you.
So these variables can be the key factors determining the academic achievement in teacher education programs. So they might play an important role in pre-service language teachers' future teaching profession. With these aims and concerns in mind, we formed the questions of what coping strategies do pre-service language teachers use most often, and the total scores for approach and avoidant coping correlate with the other variables like stress and well-being. The study was conducted at the Department of English Language Teaching at a state university in Turkey in 2020 and 2021 academic year. The number of the participants was 170, with different numbers of female and male participants, and the age range was between 18 and 27. The inventory that we formed on Google Docs included 4 main parts, which were demographic variables, coping strategies, stress and well-being. And some of the statements in this inventory was adapted according to the context of COVID-19. The first main instrument that we use in the present study was Briefcoat Scale, developed by Carver. It was used to investigate the coping strategies employed by the student teachers in the present study. It has mainly 2 clusters, which are avoidant coping and approach coping, and we are going to look at the details of the other subclusters in the findings part. And another instrument was profiler, which was used to find out the data about participants' happiness and positive well-being. The reliability check was made, and it was 0.92. It is used to find out positive emotion, engagement, relationship, meaning, and accomplishment issues in the scale. Another instrument was perceived stress scale, and it is used to measure the perception of stress or current level of experienced stress. In this scale, the items were designed to tap how unpredictable, uncontrollable, and overloaded respondents find their lives. With the reliability of 0.89, it was used. The first research question, as I said, was what coping strategies do pre-service language teachers use most often? For this, we needed to look at the mean values to understand the differences between these coping strategies, because seeing the difference between especially the approach strategies and avoidance strategies was a clue for us to understand the stress level of the students. As you can see on these mean values, the approach strategies were mostly used by the participants rather than the avoidance strategies, which has the mean value of 27.2. And it has, for example, approach strategies have different ranging means regarding the subclusters. I'm going to give some detailed explanation about each of them. And there are two subdimensions like humor and religion, which are not in this list. But students, the mean values show that students are the participants regarded these strategies as the coping strategies during this COVID-19 process. When we look at the mean values of each subcluster, we can see that the participants mostly used the acceptance strategy, which was about acknowledging the reality of what happened and learning to live with it. It was followed by active coping, which was about concentrating efforts on doing something about the situation and taking action to try to make it better. And these were followed by the positive reframing, planning, emotional support, and instrumental support. The interesting results actually came from the avoidance strategies. The first strategy used in the avoidant side was the self-distraction. Some participants regarded this as a solution to cope with the difficulties of online education and COVID-19 stressors. It was about turning to work or other activities to take mind of things and doing something to think about it less. And it was followed by venting, self-blaming, behavioral disengagement, denial, and unfortunately some substance use. And substance use included alcohol, drugs, some psychological medicines, and cigarettes, unfortunately. And as I said, humor and religion was two other dimensions preferred by the participants as coping strategies. Their mean values are actually not too low. By looking at that, a good mean value was regarded for these two. Based on these data, by looking at the approach strategies and avoidance strategies, we can say that the predominant tendency in the sample was to use approach strategies by first accepting the situation and attempting to deal with it through activity reframing and seeking emotional support. In the second research question, we aim to find out the relationship between these strategies and stress and well-being variables. Actually, the results for research question 1, if we just look at them all together, show us that a group of student teachers encountering a large number of stressors and feeling the strain of the situation, but more often choosing active coping, fortunately for us, rather than avoidance. And the correlation table shows us that as hypothesized at the beginning of the study, stress correlated negatively with the approach coping strategies, but positively with the avoidant coping strategies. And well-being had a significant correlation with approach coping strategies, but it correlated negatively with the other two variables, which were avoidant coping strategies and stress. And the correlation results were quite significant that between avoidant coping styles and the total stress, it was 0.55, and approach coping strategies negatively correlated with stress with a degree of 0.43, and it was really high for the correlation between well-being and the approach coping strategies. We can say that the above analysis showed that participants who were engaging more often with avoidant coping were also experiencing progressively higher levels of perceived stress, and higher scores for stress indicates that, to some degree at least, coping strategies are not working successfully to mitigate the perceived stress. Actually, it was not beneficial for them to use these avoidant coping strategies because it didn't lessen the level of the stress level for the participants. As these processes settle into a stable pattern, the results suggest that student teachers under the most stress are relying most on avoidant coping, compared to student teachers under less stress. And there are some suggestions for avoiding coping strategies by boys. These are some implications for features that we can use for our student teachers to adapt approach coping strategies rather than avoidant coping strategies, because the analysis basically showed us that using avoidant coping strategies didn't lessen stress, although there is a relationship between them. So the above advice points to the need for prospective teachers to be realistic and moderate in their expectations, especially when dealing with the uncertainty of the present situation. And unfortunately, Hocam, what about the time limit?
Time is already over.
Okay.
Because of the delay from the last presentation, can be summarized.
Yeah, just I'm wrapping up. Okay, sorry for this inconvenience, really. Of course, we didn't have a training program as teacher educators, teachers, or students about how to deal with a pandemic in this situation. And unfortunately, using a cross-sectional method of data collection will not show us the longer-term effects of this result. So we need to conduct a longer longitudinal study to understand the permanent results of this COVID-19 and online education situation. Also, we need to look at this issue from different perspectives, maybe by adding some other variables like anxiety, motivation, and self-efficacy. And we can also design some experimental research designs to see whether strategy training will be effective on using approach coping strategies in future. Sorry for this, fast ending for the presentation. If you have any further comments or questions as the corresponding author, you may send an email to me. I would love to answer them.
Okay, thank you for your presentation, Dilara Hocam. Any questions or comments? Okay, so let's go on with the next presentation. Sorry for the delays, Zehra Hocam. Okay, the next presentation is by Zehra Sultan Kumru Yağmurkaya, titled An Analysis of Citations in ELT Research Article Introductions, written by Turkish and non-native EFL authors. Okay, we can see your screen, Zehra Hocam.
In full screen, right?
Yes, full
Perfect.
Screen. Yes, we can see it.
Okay, then. Hello, everyone. I'm Zehra Kumru Yağmurkaya, and I'm an English instructor at National Defense University and an MA student at Gazi University. And my study is about the citations in non-native ELT research articles. And the study is in basic Imlat structure. And as we know, citation is everywhere in every work, let's say research article, thesis, and so on. And it is a reference to the relevant previous published work, and it is used to illustrate, elaborate, to build on, and to criticize. And writers in humanities and social sciences use citations more than scientists and engineers. And citations are divided into two as integral and non-integral citations by Swales. And Thompson and Tribbles divide these categories into more subcategories. They divide non-integral citations into four as source, identification, reference, and origin. And they divide integral citations into three as verb controlling, naming, and non-citation. So because of the time limitation, I will be skipping these parts quickly. And if you have any questions, you can ask.
Can you please change the slides? We just see just one slide on the screen, which is the first one.
Yes, I did it actually.
Okay, now it's okay.
All right. So can you see
yes,
it now?
Yes, we can see it now.
And now the integral citations. Did the page go? Oh, sorry.
No.
Maybe I should do it again. so sorry. I'm really sorry for the inconvenience. And I was talking about the Thompson and Tribble's integral citation division and the integral citation ones. And when we check the literature about the citations, we can see the different comparisons of focus group and native or international groups. And according to one study focusing on the comparison of Iranian MA theses in international research articles, the study finds that the Iranian people use integral citation more. And in another study, again, Iranian researchers use integral citation more when compared to other international research articles. In another study of comparison of Arabic and native MA theses, the result is similar. The Arabic people use integral citation more. And in the study of comparison of Thai and international research articles, shows us that the Thai research articles use integral citations more. And within the Turkish context, we can see again some studies. And in the comparison of Turkish and native people, they say that the Turkish people use integral citation more. Another study shows again the Turkish people use integral citation more when compared to native research articles, native authors. And in another comparison, again, Turkish people use integral citation more than the international authors, other authors. So all in all, we can see that the studies show that the focus group uses integral citation more than the other group, which is the other non-native users or native users. So the research questions of this study are there any differences between the Turkish and other non-native EFL authors' citation practices? And are there any differences in their using types of citations? The instruments of this study are the Suez and Thompson citation frameworks, and 20 research articles were issued in this paper from leading journals, and they were synchronic from last 5 years, and they follow the same IMRAT structure. And the corpus of the study is in this way: 10 from Turkish authors and 10 from other non-native authors. And I tried to focus on different language families. I didn't want to focus on one dominant group. And the data analysis, only the introduction part of the research articles were scanned, and citations were identified according to Highlands, which is every occurrence of another author's name was counted as one citation. And the citations were identified according to the frameworks. And the results of the study, you can see the Turkish authors' usage of citations here, and the other group citation usage. And when we compare them, when we look at the frequency, we can say that Turkish people use non-integral citation more than integral citation. And similarly, the other group uses non-integral citation more than the integral one. And when we compare the two groups, we can see that Turkish people uses a bit more than the other group. And when we go deeper to the integral citation types, we can see the frequencies. We can say that both groups uses verb controlling the most, and then naming, and the non-citation. And the Turkish group doesn't prefer non-citation a lot. And within the non-integral citation, the both groups preferences are different. The Turkish one prefers source the most, and while the other group prefers reference the most, and both group uses origin at the least. And this is the all in one chart. And this is another visual. When we go to the discussion of this paper, citation is important for all scientific works, and the non-native group was chosen from different nations all around the world to compare the Turkish in a broader sense, and the results show some similarities and differences. Unlike the previous works, Turkish authors use non-integral citations little more than the other group, but the difference is not so big. So we can say that there's a tendency of using non-integral citation among the non-native users of English, and this could be the new acceptance in the academy. And among the non-integral citation types, verb controlling is the most preferred one by both groups. And this could be a sign of in the verb controlling, the emphasis is on the author. So the citation users may think that the author said it, not me. So it could be a kind of relief. And non-native authors may find it easier to form this kind of sentences. Maybe they learned it in this way. And non-integral citation choice is quite different among the groups. And this could be a sign of the cultural background, educational background, and lack of training and or lack of awareness. Finally, the limitation of this study is the corpus size. It is limited only to 20 research articles. So further studies with broader corpus could be beneficial to support the findings or to add or change them. And the further studies can compare the academic works according to the language family, since they share some common features. And to sum up, this study follows Suez and Thompson and Tribble citation frameworks, and the Turkish authors use non-integral citations slightly more than the other LX users of English. And both groups prefer verb controlling among the integral citation types, and the difference is different. The choice is different in non-integral citation types, and the similarities may signal the trend in the academy, or the differences may signal the cultural and educational background and the lack of training and or lack of awareness. And this is my corpus of the Turkish authors. And this is the other group. And these are my references. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So if you have any questions.
Presentation, Zehra Hocam.
Thank you. If you have any questions, I can answer.
If you have any questions, we may ask them. Or comments. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much then.
Thank you. Okay. So let's move on with the next presentation by Hanım Türk Yılmaz, teaching English language through literature. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Hocam. May I share the screen?
Yes, you may share the screen.
Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, it will not be a long session because it's an overall review about literature and language teaching together with that. So in this presentation, I'll try to explain effective grammar teaching, but in its exact sense, effective language teaching via balancing input and output. So we can start with my outline. First of all, I'll give you an introduction related to what's literature, and then we'll talk about the reasons for using literature in language teaching. Following that, we're going to touch upon the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, and I'll give you some activity types like connectors, epitope, what if, last page plus one, and then we will come to the conclusion. This will be our steps one by one. Let's start with theoretical background and my purpose related to this presentation to make you more familiar with this. As we all know, communicative methodologies that emerged in the 1970s stress the importance of using authentic materials and activities in the classroom so as to help students achieve communicative competence at will. And this will enable them to use the language for communicative purposes in the real world. But the materials and classroom activities in general focus on the referential function of the language and do not offer opportunities for imaginative involvement. Therefore, students do not acquire the ability to understand the creative uses of the language or to function in situations in which they have to make interpretations and evaluations and give their personal response and reaction. So, as we know, when we talk about literature, personal involvement is of importance. So here in this presentation, I will try to argue the inclusion of literature in language teaching materials because they will provide students with the opportunities to experience and use the language more creatively and to develop greater awareness of the language they are learning. Let's start with what is literature, what we mean by literature in English language teaching context. As we all know, literature could be said to be a sort of disciplined technique for arousing certain emotions. And while arousing emotions, actually, we give students a chance to internalize the linguistics or some performance-related concepts. Great literature is simply language charged with meaning to the utmost possible degree. And literature is the question minus the answer. I mean that there is no correct or wrong answer in literature. That's why this raises the tolerance of ambiguity of the students. That's why it is also important. In its exact sense, literature may be defined as the aesthetic exploitation of the language. By literature, we are using the language. We are not just focusing on the structures of the language. And okay, this is literature, but why should we use literature in our classrooms? What is our purpose? Reasons for using literature in the language teaching, according to Colley and Slater, it offers us valuable, authentic material, of course, within a context, cultural enrichment, language enrichment, and personal involvement. I will touch upon personal involvement more because we need these for communicative purposes in the language classrooms. Yes, when we come to personal involvement, we can say that what is important is not the result of the interpretation, but the process involved in arriving at that interpretation via the students, via the learners themselves. The ultimate goal is not understanding that particular text, of course, but developing procedures for understanding similar texts that learners may choose to read outside the classroom. Here, the outside the classroom part is important because as long as we take the language out of the classroom, we can be successful and we can talk about the real language learning. As interpretations of texts are influenced by psychological, cognitive, affective, and social factors, each reader may arrive at, of course, different interpretations. And this is a positive thing. Why? Because it offers opportunities, again, for negotiation and interaction among the students. But students should know that although their interpretations may differ, they should always justify their answer with close reference to the text. So there will be a balance in between input and output, of course. And when we talk about literature, actually, we talk about the culture of the language, of course, and the language and its culture are two inseparable parts, because we cannot talk about only grammar, we cannot talk about only vocabulary. They're all combination of the same thing. So according to the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, which is a linguistic theory, it is a semantic structure of a language, and it shapes or limits the ways in which a speaker forms conceptions of the world. So while literature in the target language, we can shape our world or we can limit our thoughts to some extent. So we will gain another perspective, of course. And till now, I just tried to give you some brief introduction. Now I'll give you some activity samples that could be used in language classrooms. Let's start with retelling, or we can make it in written format like rewriting. The teacher in this activity gives the class a list of connectors. Students are given a passage to read at home. In the next class, they are asked in pairs to write or retell a summary of this section using each of the connectors in the list, of course, appropriately. As this activity helps students develop awareness of ways of connecting ideas, they are useful preparations for writing essays, of course, because coherence and cohesion, these are all important in language learning. An epitaph, maybe this is not that familiar to you, this could be a new one. A lapidary comment on a deceased character. Let's imagine that there is a deceased character in a literary piece. So we will create an epitaph and we will write something on that epitaph. Once again, it is the best if examples can be provided. This is an excellent pretext for a very brief appreciation of a character, but it doesn't have to be an appreciation, of course, and one that seems to be always very popular among students. This activity may boost prosegmental features of language among students, as it includes a rhyme. Here we can focus on intonation patterns of the language. When it comes to what if, this is a discussion activity which can be a follow-up to point no return. Students imagine the moment before the point of no return. What if circumstances had been different? What alternative choices could the characters have made? What other effects upon the reader could have been attained by the writer? This exercise can give rise to much useful language work. Of course, this activity is more based on language focus, because the topic requires past conditions like if X had happened, Y would have resulted, and past models like could have made, could have been attained, might have, should have. So for language focus, we can benefit from what if activity. The last one, last page plus one. If the text allows for progression, students write the next few paragraphs or next few sentences after the end of the book or the literary piece. Thus, this helps them to personalize the text by writing a response to the event or to the characters in it. As they give students a chance to study on their own, they will feel more motivated and less anxious. And this, of course, will result in more learning. When we come to the conclusion, using literature as a resource offers teachers possibilities for basing language learning activities on materials that can stimulate greater interest and involvement than is the case with other texts. And there are three types of justification for using literature in language classrooms: linguistic, methodological, and motivational. Linguistically, the use of literature is justified on a very wide range of styles, registers, and text. And if you ask me, the biggest motivation here is that using context, using an authentic material. Methodologically, it offers opportunities for genuine interaction. Yes, these are not artificial interactions, but this will lead to genuine interactions and genuine conversations among the students because of their openness to multiple interpretations. Motivationally, they deal with matters that are likely to engage learners. Learner engagement is another issue, in a personal response from their own perspectives or experiences. To put in a nutshell, painting is literature in colors. Literature is painting in language. I hope we can benefit from literature in our language classrooms. As I told you, this will be a short session. We are at the end of my session. These are my references. Thanks a bunch. You can reach out to me whenever you want. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Hocam.
Any questions or comments we have, we can take them. Okay, any questions or comments? Okay, thank you so much once again. Our presentations are over. And before closing the session, I want to thank you all for your participation. I'm honored to be a moderator of this session.
And thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Yeah. May I ask just about the deadline of full papers, please?
I was going to ask the same question also, because it is not mentioned on the website. I don't know if they have.
Yeah, also there isn't any email address to send the full paper.
I think they're going to update the page, because I'm also checking it. If Marhoja is here, maybe he could give us some information about this, but no. Okay, let's check the web page again.
Okay, thank you.
Because Marhoja is not here as far as I see. No, he's not here. Okay, thank you all. I'm closing the session right now. Okay, see you. Bye.
See you. Bye.
Goodbye.